Hello everyone and welcome to Season 5, Episode 22 of Pro Wrestling's Top 50. I'm your host Travis McNeil, and today we continue our countdown of the top 50 matches in NXT history with match number 29 on our list, which is the NXT Women's Championship match between the champion Asuka and the challenger Ember Moon from the NXT TakeOver Brooklyn 3 event held on August 19th, 2017. So at this point, Asuka had been the reigning NXT Women's Champion for over 500 days. She had a stranglehold on that title. She was completely undefeated from her time entering NXT. And she was on this incredible run that would, ultimately lead to her transition to the main roster, continuing that undefeated streak until she would lose, for better or worse, to Charlotte at WrestleMania in 2018. But here, this was really interesting when we got to this point in the match, because for a while now it had been like, okay, they've been doing this streak, Asuka, she's clearly running out of challengers in NXT, who's going to take the title from her? And Ember Moon at this point was built into the likely candidate. These two, they wrestled at TakeOver WrestleMania weekend that year. They had a good match. Ember Moon came up short, and this match was all about her journey to the rematch with Asuka and knowing that she could beat Asuka. So it made kind of logical sense that this would maybe be the big moment where, Asuka would finally lose the title and Ember Moon would get her moment in the sun as champion. And one thing that I really remember about this match is WWE was prepping to release an NXT DVD. And prior to this match happening, the match listing for the DVD was released and it included this match on it. And I remember thinking, there's no way you would predetermine that you were going to include a match on a best of compilation, because anything can go wrong with a match. Heaven forbid a performer could get injured. There could be a lot of botches. It may just not go well. So you wouldn't say that you're going to release that match if there wasn't, something big involved with it. And it would make logical sense that that would be, Asuka finally losing in this big moment, very akin, to the Undertaker streak ending, right? So I went into this match, I'm not going to lie, with the preconceived notion that Ember Moon would be winning the title. And that made this match such a fun roller coaster ride. For me watching it live at the time, I was completely stunned, shocked that Asuka would ultimately retain the title. But they do a really, really good job with this match and just with that overall story. Basically, they show two things. They show Ember Moon being completely undeniable in her quest to win that title, and they show Asuka becoming more and more desperate as the match would go on to retain her title. And, it's that desperation for Asuka that allows openings to happen that, kind of derail Ember's momentum. So this match, it starts out hot right at the bell. Ember blasts Asuka with a drop kick. Almost kind of seems like a little arrogant with it to say, like, yeah, and leading up to this match, Ember Moon would say, the quote was, you're not ready for Asuka, right? And she, was like, oh, Asuka's not ready for me. She knows that she can't beat me and that I will defeat her. So she hits this kind of arrogant drop kick right at the bell, follows up with another drop kick, and immediately goes for the cover. And I loved that early sense of urgency that Ember Moon's not playing around. She's here to win this match. And the opening, kind of sequence, it continues from that, where she's got everything of Asuka scouted. She, dodges and blocks all of the different kicks that she throws and hits a suplex. Asuka's kind of thrown off her game here. She's normally a very, kind of cold and calculated and collected performer. But here she's, scrambling to try to get to the ropes, and she bails out to the floor. Ember tries for a dive, and Asuka manages to avoid that, but then gets hit with a somersault off the second rope to the floor, and then leaves herself completely open to that. But then, Asuka, I talk about the desperation. Keep in mind at this match, she's still a babyface. She never went through a heel turn in NXT or anything like that. But, after she'd kind of ran through a lot of the heels in NXT, ultimately she won the title from mega babyface Bayley. But, she had that killer instinct, and she was this great, almost tweener where she did nothing heelish at all. But, you could put her in there with a baby face and she would almost become the de facto heel because she's so brutal. And that's exactly what happens in this match here. So there's a really great kind of momentum changing spot where, after Ember hits this big dive, she realizes, like, I'm here to win the title, and she rolls into the ring to break the count. And it's just her doing that gives Asuka like a moment to like realize where her opening was. And as Ember rolls back out to the floor to go after Asuka tullies her, just pulls her right into the ring steps. And Ember Moon hits shoulder first. And of course, Asuka uses the Asuka lock, the crossface chicken wing, one of my favorite moves ever. And that does so much damage to that shoulder. So that's that opening. And then it creates, all of this sympathy that comes on Ember Moon because she's this take charge individual, but now she's got, the weakened shoulder, and Asuka just goes to work on it. And she's absolutely vicious and brutal in this match. She hits a hammerlock suplex on the ramp. In the ring, she hits like a hammerlock STO, so like an STO, but with, Ember's arm behind her. And she just proceeds to basically do like the Bryan Danielson, like, you're going to get your effing head kicked in stomps, where he would grab the arms and stomp on the guy's head. But she does that with Ember, belly down on the canvas and just starts booting her in between her two shoulder blades. It was just so vicious and awesome. And again, really helped kind of establish that sympathy on Ember. And even though she's not a heel, giving Asuka that killer instinct to create that dynamic where, the crowd is now wanting to will somebody to win, basically the underdog, trying to conquer the 500 day, plus day title reign. Ember Moon does a really good job, still trying to keep her game plan, all of the scouting she did in motion, and she's able to avoid a lot of Asuka's big strikes and even kind of get the best of the strike exchanges. She gets a big enziguri at one point, but Asuka's just relentless and nails her with a German suplex into the buckles. There's a point in here that I thought was really good where, Ember Moon kind of grabs the crossface chicken on Asuka. And in her head, she's probably thinking, like, this is going to be my mind game to show that I am ready for Asuka and I have everything, kind of checked off. I've checked off all those boxes for my game plan to the point that I can put her in her own hold. But when she goes for this crossface chicken wing, it leaves her own shoulder exposed. And Asuka, she knows her own move better than anybody. She's able to easily break out of that hold. But now by having Ember's move, she can hit those arm breakers over her own shoulder and then lock in the chicken wing herself. So it was, again, just kind of almost showing, and I don't want to say the inexperience of Ember Moon, on the indies as Athena, and she'd had, a pretty good WWE run at this point. She's not inexperienced in any way, shape, or form, but compared to Asuka and in that big match setting, that inexperience really showed in that regard there where, she thinks that on paper she's got this perfect game plan, but Asuka's crafty and Asuka's desperate and, can just at the drop of a hat turn the match around like that. So when Asuka grabs the crossface chicken wing, Ember's able to do the classic, roll back and to get a really hot near fall off of that. Ember keeps fighting through strikes and she does, gets this good run of offense. But all of the offensive maneuvers she's using, all of these big time moves like a tornado back suplex and or a tornado snap suplex, I should say, a modified uranagi and all of this stuff, she's using her bad arm to execute this move. And the commentary does a really good job of highlighting this, basically saying, Ember Moon is doing what she needs to do to try to win, but to what sacrifice is she making, if she ultimately can't put Asuka away, she's just continuing to damage her bad shoulder in the process. And what's going to happen first? Is she going to be able to finally drop Asuka with a big enough move to beat her? Or is her shoulder just going to completely fall apart, leaving her susceptible to the crossface chicken wing and losing the match? And that's this story that we get, and it occurs really organically, and it's really good. So we finally lead after this big offensive, run of Ember Moon to her hitting the Eclipse, her big twisting stunner off the top, the O-face, whatever you want to call it. But she nails this move. And at this point, this move had been so well protected, one of the coolest moves imaginable. Nobody had kicked out. So it seems like a legitimate finish. Asuka gets the kick out from it. So, again, just like they've built up Asuka's streak, they've built up the Eclipse. They've done a really good job with it. So that's our, biggest near fall of the match. It's a great moment at this point. The crowd is really solidly into this match and very hot, as the Barclays Center crowd generally is. From here, this is where this match takes this great little turn, and I think back, Ring of Honor, they did the straight shooting series, back in the mid 2000s, a series of shoot interviews, and they did one with CM Punk and Samoa Joe, probably the most famous one that they did outside of maybe Raven and Sandman. And they talk about their trilogy of matches that they had in Ring of Honor in 2004, it would have been. And one thing that they talk about was when they were prepping their third match, Ricky Steamboat had been making appearances in Ring of Honor, and he was going to be on that event. And he came up to the two of them, and obviously, they have such a high level of respect for Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, and they had a conversation about their match. And he gave them a suggestion, and keep in mind, Samoa Joe, CM Punk, both baby faces at this point. And he said that Samoa Joe should put his feet on the ropes at some point in the match. And I remember, Punk was talking about this, and they were like, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Crazy old man Ricky Steamboat, like, what a bad idea. And they both walked away from that conversation, and then, a few minutes later came back and be like, that's absolutely genius. Because, I think wrestlers get so kind of narrowed into their face and heel role that they don't always understand basic, human emotions and desperation, really being one of those. You can be a babyface, but ultimately, your job is to win, and you want to hold on to that title, and it becomes so important to you that sometimes you have to do those acts of desperation that walk that fine line between, being a good guy and a bad guy. And in that match, Samoa Joe, he grabbed a cover and he put his feet on the ropes, and it worked great. The crowd, they didn't really know what to think, and some people were kind of booing them, and it really put over the importance of the title belt. And they do something very similar here where, Ember Moon, at this point, she obviously uses the bad arm for the Eclipse. She hit her move. It almost got her the 3, but not quite. She knows that's what she needs to win, and she goes back up to the top once again. And Asuka knows she can't avoid that move. So what does she do? She pulls the referee in front of her. So again, Asuka's a babyface, but she's so desperate to retain that title and especially keep that streak alive that's been, at this point, the streak is bigger than she is, that she pulls that referee in front. And that allows Ember Moon to kind of get thrown off her game. She can't hit the Eclipse, so she actually dives over top of the referee with a crossbody on Asuka. And Asuka rolls back through it and grabs the tights. So very much akin to Samoa Joe's feet on the ropes. Asuka grabs those tights for leverage to try to do whatever she can to win. It gets her a 2 count because the referee sees the tights in play. While all of this commotion is going on, they get an amazing near fall where, Asuka's kind of arguing with the referee, again, very out of character for her, and Ember Moon just blasts her with a super kick and only gets 2 off of it. And it seemed like that was the finish, and that would kind of be this poetic end to Asuka's title reign. But it wasn't enough. And, Asuka at this point, we talk about desperation. We talk about having to go into the bag of tricks. She's tried to use the referee. She's tried to use the tights. She's used the stairs and the ramp. Nothing is working. What does she do? She goes into what I always consider the Bret Hart playbook, and she plays possum. So Ember Moon goes over, tries to pick her up, and she just drops. Lures Ember into a false sense of security because in Ember Moon's head, she's so focused on doing what it takes to win the title. She's not really thinking about all of these extra tricks, and she thinks that she has Asuka, completely defeated her on the ropes. And as she tries to pick her up again, Asuka grabs a cross arm breaker on the bad arm. And something that I love here, Asuka knew what Ember Moon was going to do. Ember Moon has this game plan. She has this scouting report. She's checked all of these boxes, and she knows if I'm grabbed into submission, I need to roll back and try to get the pin out of it. So as she's in this cross arm breaker, she rolls back, gets a 2 count, but as the pin's broken up, she's now in the perfect seated position where Asuka can easily grab the Asuka lock, the crossface chicken wing, that she wouldn't have been able to grab while she was on the mat. She had to grab that arm for the armbar, right? But she knew this was coming. She out-scouted Ember Moon. Ember Moon's perfect game plan that she thought would win her the title had a hole in it. And that hole was the crafty, desperate veteranship that Asuka, had. And she got the Asuka lock, and to my surprise, to the crowd's surprise, to everybody's surprise, Ember Moon had to tap out. The shoulder couldn't take anymore. A story that they had built up had found its end. This match, if they just went kind of big moves and things like that, it would have been great. But all of those extra story elements made this match really, really special. Asuka would end up moving to the main roster. She would relinquish the NXT Women's title. That's something that NXT's done a couple of times where they've established dominant champions. And as those champions move up to the main roster, rather than have them lose, which is something that everybody sees coming, they've had them relinquish the title. And I don't think that devalues the title at all. I think that actually makes the title almost in a way seem more important. So she would relinquish the title. Funny enough, Ember Moon would actually end up winning a 4-way at TakeOver War Games. And Asuka would present her with the title, which I always found, very interesting and almost kind of this sort of a slap in the face of, you couldn't beat me for the belt, so here, take the title, but know that you weren't ready for me, you weren't ready for Asuka, and that, I still have that, that victory I can hold over your head. What this should have eventually led to would be Asuka remaining undefeated on the main roster, winning the women's title after she won the Royal Rumble, Ember Moon eventually getting the call up and being the one to end the streak. That's how I would have done it. Ultimately, that's not how it was done. Asuka won the Rumble and lost to Charlotte at WrestleMania. They had a great match, but was what it was. People have differing opinions on it. This match, though, it's absolutely excellent. You can find it, of course, on Peacock. If you're outside the US, you can find it on the WWE Network. It's also available for free on YouTube. WWE does a really good job at having a lot of TakeOver matches on YouTube, so I will make sure I link it on my Twitter account. You can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Wrestling50, and subscribe to the channel here on YouTube so that you never miss a video. And please join me again tomorrow as we continue to count down Pro Wrestling's Top 50.